Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome you today to my interview with the internationally renowned, the one and only Ashley Blaker. Ashley, how are you doing?
Good. I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I'm good.
What an honour. Ashley is a British comedian, described as the UK's only Orthodox stand-up comedian, writer for TV, for radio, producer of Little Britain. Now, Ashley, you're a graduate of both Oxford and Cambridge. You went
Yes.
to the
Good.
prestigious Haberdashers school, I think just a few school years behind Sacha Baron Cohen. You're a good friend of Matt Lucas, with
Also
whom
have,
you
yes.
co-produced
Yeah.
Little Britain. What background? Your parents must be so proud of you.
Well, they were up to the comedy part, probably. No, they are. I mean, you know what Jewish parents are like. You know, they would be proud probably of anything I did. You know, if God forbid I became a serial killer, it's but he was the best. You know, he was the best. Yes, I mean, certainly, you know, things like Oxford and Cambridge and what have you, those kind of things are, the Jewish parents love all that. I'm hoping, being an Oxford graduate, I might get the vaccine first. I don't know. I think that the Oxford vaccine should be offered to alumni first. I think it's only fair.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be very nice. Please let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
Ashley, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day life. What does your job involve? You know, between 9 and 5, what are you up to?
What at the moment? I mean, well, the thing is, obviously, it's you know, it's all changes all the time, and has changed enormously over the last, you know, 8 months. I've lost track of time. 8, 9 months, however long it's been. So before 8, 9 months ago, I was actually in America for a long time. I had my second off-Broadway show just closed, just before the kind of real onset of coronavirus in the West. So until that point, touring, performing, sometimes performing 2 theatre shows a day, but touring around the United States and around the world, Australia and South Africa and Israel and different places, and obviously the UK. Since then, obviously rather different. At the moment, what I should be doing is writing my new Radio 4 series, and I keep putting it off, and instead I'm talking to you. And I realized, you know, I was thinking earlier, well, it's Monday morning, as good a day as any to start something, start a project, what have you. And then I realized it's the 30th of November, so I thought, well, tomorrow's the 1st of the month, that's the time to start. So there's always there'll always be a reason. Then it'll be Rosh Chodesh, you know, there's always a reason after Hanukkah, whatever. There'll always be a good reason to put something off. But there you go, I'm talking to you, I'm doing things like this. So what more can I ask for?
Absolutely. And tell me something. If you would say, you know, I've seen a lot of your stuff online. I thought it was a tremendous kindness that you did to the community. You made a lot of it free for people suffering through COVID, which was really, really nice thing to do. If you look back at all your career moments, what's been your greatest highlight of your career? But before this interview, obviously.
Yes. Well, obviously, it goes without saying. Yeah, so it's interesting when you were introducing me before, you know, you talk about being a producer and a writer and then a performer. I now see myself, you know, as a performer. That's what I do, and that's what I've been doing only for like 5 years. So let's answer in that context, you know, rather than anything kind of predating that. So I don't know. I suppose, you know what, this will sound a really because I do get asked these questions a lot, and this will sound like I don't want to sound too what's the word, too self-regarding, what have you. But rather than, you know, there's lots of things that I'm really proud of, you know, say having my own Radio 4 show and another series and doing different tours, different countries and 2 off-Broadway shows, and they're all amazing things. But actually the things that really please me is when I'll get, you know, it happens, you know, someone will send me an email and say, I had a really bad day, but then I watched your clip of you, or you posted something on Facebook that made me laugh and you cheered me up. And I think those are the things that actually, when all's said and done, those are the things that actually I give me the most pleasure, actually. And it sounds rather affected to say that. I think that was the word I was looking for before.
Well, I think, look,
but it's true. But it's true.
It's very true. It's very true. In fact, it's the Gemara in Tanis. The Gemara in Tanis, I believe, describes how, you know, when we talk about who has the greatest portion in the world to come, Eliyahu Novi was walking in the marketplace and he was pointing at the comedians, the people who raise people's spirits.
Yeah, the Badchanim, exactly. Yeah, it's Rabbi Baroika Beichozai in the marketplace of Beilephet, and yes, Eliyahu Navi appears before him and points out the two Badchanim and says they've got a chelik in Olam Haba. And yeah, I mean, so there's that. And also the other thing, I think when you write, produce comedy or what have you on TV, the really great TV shows, I always think the best TV shows ever are the things that once you've seen them, you can almost never see the world the same way again. I think Monty Python had that quality. But there's lots of comedy shows that I can think of that, once you've seen them, it's almost impossible to ever see something quite the same way again. And I think really good stand-up should be like that. And I'm always very, and I'm not saying myself does it, that's what the aim would be, but I kind of get a feeling that maybe I'm achieving that when someone will say to me, I was on the London Underground the other day, and a really frum guy got on. He had a beard and pets, but he was wearing a baseball hat, and it made me think of you. Or I saw a really badly parked car, or somebody pulled over on the Golders Green Road, double parked, and it made me think of you. Or I was at a simcha and they brought out the sushi, and it made me think of you. And those are actually the things that most gratify me, actually, because it makes me think that I've kind of the material has kind of changed your the way of. The material has worked well and it's stuck with you. I always think there are some comedians you'll go and see. You might go to a comedy club on a Saturday night and you'll see a comedian. He might be absolutely brilliant, have you in hysterics for 20 minutes. And then if I asked you on Sunday morning, what did he talk about? You just might not remember. And I think
a bit like some of our shiurim. As a rabbi, we have something in common, eh?
Well, there you go. Exactly. I suppose that's the thing. Exactly. I mean, what are the drasha or the shir, what have you, that somebody says to you stuck with them and 10 years later they remembered, and even more so if it had an impact on their life. That's the thing that's going to be much more powerful and you'd be much more proud of than some things that just people enjoyed at the time. By Shabbos afternoon they couldn't remember.
Now, let me ask you this. Tell us a bit about Matt Lucas. Is he really so funny in real life? And also a little bit about Little Britain, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, well, so I mean, Matt's a really good friend of mine, and comedians often you'll hear or read someone say, I met this comedian and he was very dull. I'm sure people say, I met Ashley Blaker in Kosher Kingdom, and he wasn't funny at all. But when Matt and I are together, certainly when we've been writing things together, the joy and the fun of you'd kind of do it for free. I mean, it really, it's making each other laugh and working with funny people who make you laugh is great. I mean, what a great gift of a job. Little Britain was an interesting one because it all. In fact, Matt talks about this a lot in his autobiography. Recalls this story. Basically, him and David Walliams had been working together with, I would say, medium success. They had a short-lived series of 5 minutes, 5 minutes on BBC Two, but it hadn't been very successful. Kind of come and gone. And I think they were even thinking really about parting ways and just going off and trying to do something else separately. And I got this job at the BBC as a trainee producer. And Matt and I kind of bumped into each other one day after having not seen each other for a bit in Soho. And he tells this story of the meetings that changed his life. And it really was one of those things that changed. Sometimes it's an amazing thing. It's if you want to be super frum about it, you'd say it's hashgacha pratis. God running the world. It's a real moment of hashgacha pratis, divine provenance. That you could bump into someone at any point, but you're bumping into them at the moment that will really change your life. And in fact, I mean, you asked me before about getting into this kind of line of business. Anyway, the story of how I came to be at the BBC is an incredible story of hashgacha. I was unemployed. I was 24 years old. I'd left Cambridge. I really had no idea what to do. I didn't even have, it's not even like I had a kind of ambition of going, well, I'll do this, I'll do that. I really was kind of floating along. And I went for a drink one Thursday evening with a couple of teachers, former teachers of mine from school. And I was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And one of them said, why don't you look in the Media Guardian? If you maybe not be we were a Telegraph household. I didn't know the Media Guardian. He said it's a supplement media supplement with the Guardian newspaper. It comes out every Monday. So this was a Thursday night. So 4 days later, I bought the Guardian paper for the first time in my life. And there in the media section was a job. Do you have funny bones? The BBC needs trainee comedy producers. And I applied and got the job. And, you know, the advert was only in the paper for 1 week. And there I was buying it, despite the fact that 4 days earlier, I'd never even heard of the Media Guardian. So, you know, if that's not hashgacha pratis, I don't know what is. It's extraordinary.
Now, let me ask you this. Some people watch shows like Little Britain, and they would say that they're incredibly rude and crude, and they don't really match up with an Orthodox comedian. How do you kind of reconcile the crudity of the humour and your Orthodox Jewish values?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I mean, you know, I talk about specifics because, you know, if you're talking about specific things, it might have been something that I didn't produce, you know, that was after I was a producer, or you know, what was some time ago, and maybe I've changed, whatever. So let's not talk about specifics. But I think it's something that comes up with me all the time, and almost every show I ever do, someone will come and see me now, and I'll get letters. Which is why also you introduced me before as, you know, the only Orthodox, and I don't really like all these labels. It's not really, you know, I don't believe in these labels. I am who I am, and it's for other people to put those labels on. But you know, someone will send an email via my website or write to the theatre sometimes and say, I was very disappointed because I thought it would be 100% kosher, and I didn't like this joke you made, and that's not an appropriate thing for a frum Jew to say, and what have you. And I think there's a few things to say to that. Firstly, you've got to just be true to yourself and say the things that you're happy saying and you feel comfortable saying. I used to ask a lot more Shiloh's questions to the Rav and say, what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? And I now kind of feel much more secure in my own judgment, and ultimately that I need to be my own judge and decide for myself. Secondly, though, you know, it would be, somebody said to me, oh, I saw a poster that said you were kosher. Now, firstly, they might have seen a quote that said something about that once, but certainly not me saying kosher. Only a fool would say that, because, you know, we all have different standards. I was performing somewhere for a synagogue, as sometimes happens, like a gala dinner, one of those things in America. And a rabbi, I often get these calls from the rabbi before, you know, saying, you know, want to just double check that you're not going to say this, that, and the other. And he said, you are going to be kosher. I just want to be sure. And I said to him, I frighten people when I say this, actually. But I said, look, I'm not going to give you any assurances that you will find me kosher, because I do not know where you're holding. You know, are we talking rabbinut? Are we talking Mahadrin? Are we talking Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin? You know, do you hold only Chelek Beis Yosef? Do you hold it? You know, and just because I think something is kosher, you might have a different standard. So, you know, it's very, you know, these things are very challenging.
Sure.
You know, I had a thing, I had a show, and I had a very irate, I do get a lot of irate. Jews love complaining, I should say that. You know, if you go and see, I'm sure Michael McIntyre never does, you know, he'll play to, you know, 20, 30,000 people. You'd think with that number of people, you get complaints. I'm sure he never gets letters saying, dear Mr. McIntyre, I'm not the kind of person who writes these kind of letters. But while I loved 89 minutes of your show, at the end, you made one joke that I don't like, and I now insist you take this out. But I get that, because that's what Jews are like. And sometimes they even quote sources. They bring Meforshim, you know, they actually have Makairos, they have, you know, and somebody quoted a Gemara in Pesachim, Gimel Amud Beis about Nivel Peh. And I said, look, I can't argue that what you've cited is true, but the Gemara doesn't say what are those words. Now we're going to argue what are those words, because the words that you think are inappropriate words might not be. There's not a definitive list. The Gemara, Rashi doesn't bring down a list.
Sure. I mean, I think this isn't just about comedians. This is across every career and every person from every walk of life. As Jewish people, we are held to a high level of expectation by society. And that's why Michael McIntyre might not get the letter, but you might. Would you agree with that?
Oh no, I don't think that's. I think it's we're the Torah calls us a stiff-necked people. I mean, we are a difficult people. We like arguing. We like we how many if you how many miracles were done for the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, and they were still moaning and complaining and complaining and complaining. We like complaining. We're a people of complainers.
Oh, absolutely.
With regards to, I mean, the points you make about making Kiddush Hashem, making a Chillul Hashem, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I mean, yeah, I mean, you obviously, this series is about, you're talking to people in careers, people who are Jewish and working in out in the world. And I feel, particularly with doing what I do, I feel very strongly about making a Kiddush Hashem. And I think it is very important to make Kiddush Hashem. I'm often, certainly before, when I was like a producer and what have you in TV, I'd be the only frum Jew many people had ever met. So that is very important.
Well, I must say, from a Jewish perspective, comedy is really important, and all the way through, as we said, the Gemara discusses it. The Rambam discusses the idea that when somebody's how much of a mitzvah it is to try and alleviate circumstances for people who are unwell, for people who are suffering, to make jokes, to raise people's spirits. It's phenomenal, and it reminds me of Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. He used to say there are loads of jokes in the Talmud, and he said, yeah, but they're all old ones, right? It's really important to try and bring humor into everything that we do as Jewish people. Okay, Ashley, I need some advice from you. So as a rabbi, one of my key responsibilities is giving sermons. And when I do give sermons, we always need to make sure that they're funny. But I guess what I'd love to get from you some tips of how to ensure that my own sermons are more humorous.
Oh God, I mean, it's difficult. It's so difficult. People ask me this all the time. Funnily enough, I actually did I'll send you afterwards a link. I did a whole 45-minute session on this for rabbis around the world. The Yeshiva University had a ongoing course for rabbinic improvement, and I did. And I have to try and remember what I said. But I think they are such different animals because the people, as I say, the audiences do like to complain. If you're too funny, you can miss the mark and what have you. You can end up upsetting people, what have you. But I think it's being true to oneself. The point I made before about saying the things that you're comfortable saying. I think when you sometimes see a rabbi get up and just say, he's basically Googled or picked up a book and tried to find a joke just for the sake of having a joke, because somebody once said, start your sermon with a joke, is not as interesting as I think there are some people who actually really use humor, incorporate it throughout their entire everything they say, because they've now, maybe you need kind of funny bones to do that. But I think that if you can do that in a more personal way, really see the humor in situations.
Absolutely. My favorite joke. My favorite joke I ever told at the pulpit was when we had an offer, and the guy was a real, strong Manchester United fan. And I said to him, I hope you enjoyed seeing all the silverware. When we opened the Ark today, you don't get to see too much of that from where you come from. It went down quite well. They like that one. But let me ask you this. Let me try on you a few of my jokes, and tell me which one would you go for, right? So I've got to do the killer sermon. I've got 3 jokes. I want to say them to you. We'll start with a very short one-liner and a couple of others. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
Okay, so of course we need to begin with the Moses joke. You know the Moses joke. How did Moses make tea?
Mm-hmm.
He brews it. He brews it.
He brews it. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm not so keen on that one. I'm not a big pun fan, but okay.
Okay. How about this one? So this is the joke of the Jewish mother, right? The Jewish mother, she gets a phone call from her son. Mummy, I've been elected president of the United States. Mother says, wow, that's great. What do you want me to do about it? She says, well, I want you to attend the inauguration. She says, well, I don't have anything to wear. Don't worry, I'll get you a dress. Well, how am I going to get there? I'll send for you a limousine. You got to come. And at the inauguration, sitting there with all the dignitaries, watching her son being sworn in. And she says to everyone in a very loud voice, see that boy over there? His brother's a doctor.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's a good joke. I mean, it's an old joke, but
not bad.
That's what we were talking about before. About you asked me about your parents being proud. So yeah, okay, that's good.
And the final one. What about this one? The waiter joke. A group of Jewish women. They're eating lunch in a cafe. And the waiter nervously approaches them and says, "Ladies, is anything okay?"
Yes. Well, there you go. That's what I'm
That's a
talking
classic.
about. Well, we're talking about, we like complaining. That's what I'm saying. We like complaining. I think the key, I mean, a rabbi once said to me, and I think this is really, really important, just lesson for life in general, is he said, you should take your Yiddishkeit seriously, for sure, but you shouldn't take yourself too seriously. And I think what I see, with some of the letters I get, hilarious. People take themselves, some people take themselves incredibly seriously, and that's the trouble. It's
Who's your greatest role model?
There can be, I don't know. I mean, people also, there's lots of comedians that I like, that I love, but I wouldn't kind of. I mean, I'm Frank Skinner. I think is the finest comedian I've ever seen. But I wouldn't say I was similar in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know. I really kind of just try and write the things that make me laugh. I mean, that's really the key thing is with doing what I do, and maybe that's good advice you can take into the pulpit. I write what makes me laugh, and if
Does your wife find you funny?
Not really, and sometimes she's not a great judge, and I'll often say to her, "Do you like things?" She does, and then when she does like something, that's usually a bad sign. So you've got to be true, again, being true to yourself, saying the things you like, saying, not trying to second guess the audience.
Your kids find you funny?
I think if they did, they wouldn't admit it.
Ashley, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your family. I know on social media you also have a daughter who's Down syndrome, and you guys are incredible parents from what I understand. Perhaps you could share some inspiration and something with everybody who's watching.
So we have 4 boys and 2 girls, and as you say, one of our daughters has Down syndrome. Her name's Sarah, and she is 12. We actually adopted her when she was 2. And I don't know. I mean, hashgacha practice we were talking about before, and about those kind of things, opportunities that come your way, and just strange things that happen in your life. And this opportunity came along 10 years ago or so, what have you. And and we grabbed it, and it was a really great thing for our family. She's a real blessing in many ways.
How many older children do you have above her?
So, we had 4 boys. One of whom is younger than her, but we had 4 boys when we adopted her. So, and then we've had so she's the 4th oldest, but the 5th child to come along, and then we had another daughter thereafter. And yeah, I mean, she's a real precious neshama. That's famously. I think it was the Chasam Sofer who would famously stand up in the presence of often people would stand up when the Rav walks in the room. He would stand up in the presence of someone with Down syndrome, a kind of pure neshama. So yeah, I mean, she's a real blessing.
If I may ask, what drove you to adopt the child when you really?
I don't know. People ask that. It's to paraphrase Edmund Hillary, because she was there. I mean, she was advertised widely in the Jewish world, and we were the kind of lucky winners, as it were. I mean, it's not like something we were kind of looking to do. It's not like we'd ever thought, it'd be nice to adopt a child. There are people obviously who do that, and there are lots of people amazing people who foster. We've got a real kind of vocation almost to help people in that way. I certainly, and I think what they do is much a greater effort, I would say. I mean, for this is just, it was just, she was there. It kind of, and it all sometimes falls into place. So one of those, and I don't really ever think of her. I mean, I know we've talked about it here, but it's not like I in any way think of her as not being our own child.
Finally, what's your career aspiration? Where are you going to be in 10, 20 years from now? What's next for you?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose the aim of any comedian, I would say, is or any artist really, but certainly any comedian, I think, is you just want the greatest number of people to hear or see or what have you, what it is you've got to say. So, the aspirations are always to increase that, to have more, to do more, TV or whatever it is, ways to make sure that the audience hopefully, increases and that more people get to see it. That's really what it is. And then to also improve just generally for the work. I mean, I always look back at clips, old videos. I was looking at a video yesterday that I was thinking of posting because it was kind of vaguely seasonal. And I was like, oh, God, I'm a real self-critic, and I look at it and go, oh, I hate it. Like I feel that I've improved a lot, and I think that's what you want to see.
Ashley Blake, this has been a real pleasure. I wish you ongoing success, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Pleasure, real pleasure.